social media, it's the native that wants to come in and say, I'm okay with that person wearing a war bonnet as a costume. Like, I'm cool with it. So that is another issue all in itself. It's like, again, returning to spirituality. When was the last time that person went to ceremony? Maybe that's what they need to get their mind, back in order. I think spirituality and prayer, our form of spirituality and prayer, has been so removed from us because of generational trauma and because of colonization, assimilation.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I lost my train of thought, which is part of that COVID stuff. Brain fog. It is. But you were saying something I was going to speak to a minute ago, but I've lost my train of thought now. But colonization. Colonization plays such a part in who we are now. Like you were saying, I think that we're not touched like our parents were directly by discrimination. Now it is systematic. So like where my mother remembers, she's 86 now. She remembers when the community made them take their longhouse down because it was somewhat like anti-Christian, I guess. And we are a Christianized tribe. And the ones who were more traditional, which was my grandfather's family, they were ridiculed and they had to take the longhouse down. So my mother was more directly impacted by discrimination and feeling less than for being an Indian than someone like me. I know what I was going to say too. Mia, you do an excellent job, and we do need social media warriors out there, because I will admit, I did not understand the harm in calling the Washington Redskins at first. Yeah. I had to be educated on that. I grew up around the Redskins here in DC, and my nieces were Redskinettes, little junior cheerleaders. And I didn't see, I really thought it was more of an honor to us. Yeah. And I really had to listen to my brothers and sisters, my Indigenous brothers and sisters, tell me, no, JoJo, this is why it harms us. But we have to be, you can't think you're always right, because I really had to be educated. And I think what you're doing with the cultural appropriation is wonderful, because you've got a lot of Indigenous people out there, not unlike me, who have good intentions, but on some issues, everybody doesn't know everything. We're wrong sometimes, and we have to listen to the other's opinions and get an education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely important. And that I try not to, when it comes to our people, and I'm a little bit more not as harsh with them, because I can't be very harsh with outsiders, if you will. And it's only because of the whole trust thing and the whole disrespect. And my father when he passed away, he's 86 years old. So he's an older man. And I was raised and my father was pushed into a residential school that he ran away from when he was 6 years old. So speaking of trauma, my father passed down these traditions and stuff. And maybe I am the way I am, and I speak out the way I speak out because I did have somebody from that generation bringing me up, as opposed to, let's say, if it would have been my mother's generation, I don't know how to explain it. So I was adopted by my grandparents. My father is my grandfather.
Yeah.
So that's my mother's father. It's not some weird incestual thing. It's just
no. My three oldest siblings were adopted by my grandparents.
Yeah. And that, of course, my mother's generation, it was all about partying. It was the 70s. And, if I had been raised in that generation, I think I would be more of the not as connected Native. I think being raised by my father in that traditional sense allows me to speak out and be a little bit more harsh and a little bit more open, because I was taught about the racism that he experienced. I was taught that he wasn't allowed to go into certain restaurants, which, they talk about, our relations, our cousins, the African-American people, and they were not being allowed, if there was segregation, but they don't speak about how it affected Indigenous and Native peoples of this continent as well. So just having red skin. Yeah. So I think that allows me to be a little bit more out, but I'm still learning too. I I don't know everything. I think people see Native and Indigenous peoples as pan-Indigenous, like we're all encompassed into one. But, you know, I don't know everything about everything, you know, like other tribes. People come and ask me questions about like coastal Salish, and I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
You know, Mia, you bring an excellent point up though about like with segregation. I'm the youngest of 5. My oldest 3 siblings were adopted and raised by my Native grandparents. And my oldest brothers and sisters, they're like 10 years older than me. I'm 57, just turned 57. And anyway, my oldest brother can tell you he wasn't even allowed to go in the barber shops of our town, of our territory, because he was Native. And there was Indian only signs, white only signs, black only signs there. It was triracial community. And like you said, you went to the homes of people. If you wanted a haircut, you went to the homes. And of course, this is back in the late 60s, early 70s, when Natives wanted to be assimilated and they didn't grow their hair and they did want a haircut. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then with AIM, the advent of AIM, we started growing our hair and wearing our ribbon shirts or whatever was authentic to your culture, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just thought I'd throw that in there. That's a good point that's often overlooked, is that there was Indian only signs and, you know, not only Indian only signs, but we will not serve Indians.
Yeah. We weren't allowed to leave the reservation in the 70s without a permit. I mean,
I didn't, yeah, you know, I didn't know that till the other week.
Yeah. And that's like, that goes to show what the AIM movement, just the rising of AIM brought about, trying to rid of that and ridding of that. But it's like up until the 1970s, we weren't allowed to leave the reservation. I mean, they economically starved us in these reservations and then did not allow us to leave without permission.
They were war camps.
They were
They
war
were
camps,
war
yeah.
camps.
Mhm.
You know, that's a good way to lead into a discussion. And Aaliyah, it's just the 3 of us. I think we should all just join in the discussion. We were planned to have a discussion on sovereignty tonight and get Mia's input on it. And I think this is a good place to start it with. We're talking about reservations, and a lot of people do not realize, they think that when you say reserve or reservations, the government reserved us this land, when that's just not true. Through treaties or other statutes following the treaty era, we reserved this land for ourselves. This was our land. And sovereignty is inherent. And when we entered into treaties, bilateral treaties with the federal government, they didn't give us anything. We gave them our land, and we reserved certain rights for ourselves, such as, you know, the hunting and the fishing rights. But also, we reserved that piece of land for ourselves in agreement that they would provide certain services for us. But I would like just to go on the record as saying they reserved us nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think people forget that too. And like, there's so many treaties that are being broken, and you have people that are telling us, you have these reservations, you have casinos, you have all this. We live tax-free on an oasis, and we're just all rich.
Yeah.
All rich casino barons. Like, well, I don't understand. And then apparently we get $15,000 a month. Like, where's my casino money?
Yeah.
You know, like, but they don't understand. We don't even have clean water on these reservations. So that goes back to like, okay, treaties are supreme law that are being broken. And these are people who want to stand by the honorable Constitution. Well, okay, so you understand that. I think it's like Section 2 of the Constitution that talks about treaties being supreme law. And you're allowing them to be broken. So where are you stepping in to say, let's make a change in this, you know? I think, again, that falls back on, I have a ton of arguments with people on social media regarding, well, you know, you have this, you have that, you have your reservation, you have your land and all this other stuff. But it's like, you don't understand what we actually have there. We have no infrastructure. We have no economy. There are some nations that are a little bit richer than others, but you have to take into accountability, state recognition and federally recognized also. Like if they're not federally recognized, they're only state recognized, or not even that, they're just a nation all in its own. Where are they getting funding from?
I'm from I'm Tuscarora and Lumbee. So Lumbee is state recognized. And as you say, well, actually, people don't realize we are state recognized, but we were federally recognized in the Lumbee Act of 1956. If you read the Lumbee Act, it actually says we will recognize them, but we will not qualify them to benefit as Indians for any federal service that other federally defined Indians receive. So in other words, we were recognized without any benefit of services at all.
That's disgusting.
So we get
Right.
housing money and whatnot, but you know, we don't get anything for being federally recognized. We're federally recognized in name only. So
I mean,
that's really hard
it's
when you're trying to establish sovereignty.
exactly. And then like speaking on, you know, like just touching on the sovereignty issue from the native perspective, right? That we do have friends that talk about, you know, like removing the social security number and giving us, you know, sovereignty over our land and decision making and all this stuff. But it would be difficult because a lot of our peoples are reliant. Let's say a U.S. Army veteran who served his country, and a lot of people have a hard time accepting, you know, like especially when you're reconnecting back. And I have this thing that I talk about. I'm sorry, I'm like jumping subjects, but
No, you're fine.
I call it the white devil complex, right? You have a new person who understands or is reconnecting as a new native, and they all believe that we all hate the government and we all hate the white man. And I call it the white devil complex. It's a Hollywood perpetuated farce, you know, like we don't all hate this, right?
Right.
So you have those people speaking on sovereignty and saying we need to like let go of our government names and our social security numbers and all this stuff. And how could you serve in the U.S. Army? Okay, so my touch on that as a veteran is, so would I rather serve this government or have this our lands overtaken again by another government who would push us out even further, right? And then benefits that come for, let's say, a 20-year retired veteran native veteran who has served his land. And our nations have a system, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say it is the Lumbee of North Carolina, that have this ritual for veterans that are returning from war, and they give them warrior status within their nations. There's like a ceremony and everything. And it's like, we see it differently. You know, it's like the Lakota. Okay, you want to like the Battle of Little Bighorn. First time in American history that the U.S. flag was captured on American soil, and the Lakota people still have that flag. So the flag represents something different to us, and that flag was never returned. That is our flag. The flag that flies, you know, how can you display the American flag? Because it's ours, you know?
I get it. And
but there's so much that goes with sovereignty that I feel like if we were to be given sovereignty, right? We do have it in a sense, but if we were to be given, like, we would have to have infrastructure on our reservations. We would have to have a way to import, export. What can we give you to give us money? Because I feel like they would do like they did with the buffalo and just starve us.
No, I think what you say is a valid point. Maybe we can rephrase it and say something like, well, we are dependent, you know, the Supreme Court defined us as domestic dependent sovereigns or nations.
Yeah.
So we're limited sovereigns right now, but because they divested us of our sovereignty, you know, through treaties and then statutes, they have divested us of our sovereignty. We've had to fight to